week and getting ready to dig into week 6 material. And this is a fun one. It's fun for a couple of reasons. We like to always think that professional athletes have this allure about them, you know, because you see them on Sunday, or if it's baseball, you see them playing in the World Series or the playoffs. But most people don't pay any attention to how a professional athlete actually not only gets selected to be in the NFL or play as a Major League Baseball player, but how they conduct themselves on a rolling 12-month basis. We're going to spend some time talking about that today, because my belief, and the belief of many others, if you ask them the right question, is real estate is broken because it's focused on the wrong model. In other words, we're emulating the wrong people. Anything you want to add, Stephanie? Because I mean, you and I have talked extensively about seasonality, and you were there when I was working with lots of professional athletes in the real estate business when I was in St. Louis, because it was part of my business practice was to handle the professional players. So you got to observe this. We even sold some property to professional athletes, and we got to see how they conduct themselves and how tight their schedule is different times of the year. So we got to witness this firsthand, and we'll talk about that as we get through today. But with that as a sort of a layup for what we're going to cover today and why this is important, what do you want to add, or what questions or topics do you want to lay in here that we want to make sure we address today?
Well, what I want to make sure that we tell the truth about is there is a schedule that people that practice real estate, just like lawyers practice law, that when we set our goals for the entire year, when we start looking at 2016 and business planning, truth be told, first of all, we work on a 10-month schedule, don't we? I mean, when we set goals, we work on a 10-month schedule. And what I want to make sure that people understand is that, and you said the magic word, athletes follow their schedule. That when it's spring training, they're all in. If they're playing baseball, they're down in Jupiter, Florida. I think that's where St. Louis, St. Louis Cardinals play and whomever. But they follow their schedule. And the time for all in on practicing is during the off season, isn't it? And the truth is, there doesn't have to be an off season in real estate. Now, most people, because the National Association of Realtors says, don't list your houses in the winter because there aren't any buyers. Well, that's not even true. So we're going to bust some myths this morning. I think that's what we're going to do, is bust some myths. And I'm going to kind of lay this on the table for you, because you practice this presentation and you're awesome at this, and is help people to understand about what their real schedule is, and that what our goal is for 2016 for now, for November and December, is go start finding listings for spring. So did I set you up as well as I had hoped or not?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, I'm going to just recap what their homework was from 2 weeks ago before we had a bye or off week last week, and just make sure people are continuing to get ready for this, because we're going to be turning the corner to wrap up the last couple sessions and dig into this. We're also going to be releasing some information on the business planning sessions that are going to be available for those that are looking to sign up for the business planning intensive. So again, you need to be looking at your 2015 plan. In other words, what did you say you're going to do this week, do this year, versus what did you actually do? Take a look at your market conditions, because that's going to make a big difference. We've got people starting to tell us that their markets are at a different state than they were last fall, and the markets are starting to shift a little bit. They're never going to stay static. The one thing about local markets is they're going to change, so you need to get up to speed on what's going on in your market. I can't tell you the number of people that I'll start asking questions of, if you're a market expert, that you should be able to answer. Things like, well, tell me a little bit about your 30-day pending number. In other words, how many contracts went into contract in the last 30 days in your market, and how does that compare to the same 30 days last year? And I get it. Well, I'll have to look that up. But if you don't know that, I'll just call it out like it is. You're reasonably clueless about what's going on in your market, because you might be saying it's slowing down, and it very well may. But what you got to realize is that is the type of powerful language that you can say. Now, if the answer was, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we're 50% lower on our 30-day pending number than we were at the exact same period this year. What that means is, if you're going to compete, you have to be priced very aggressively. and it's a much different situation than it was even 6 months ago. Think about the power in being able to do that. So if you are not up to speed on your market conditions, you need to do that as part of your homework. We talked the last time about billable hours. It'll tie into what we're going to talk about today, so I won't spend much time on that. And then getting real clear on your why. We're going to do a specific webinar on something that we heard this weekend. It's called the I must, which ties into this why, and making better decisions, saying no to more things than yes to everything. We're going to tie that in, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. It'll be one of the specific one-off webinars that we'll do and release. It's not going to be something we're going to charge for because it is so important. So with that, let's talk about seasonality. And why is this important? Well, I can tell you this is important because I want to give you an idea about how a professional athlete looks at this and what they do. We had a buyer that played hockey and was coming in to play for the Blues, and he was going to have to buy a house, right? He got traded out of Toronto, I think it was, and was coming to St. Louis, signed up on the website. He literally had, in the span of a 10-day period, 2 hours he could devote to looking at houses that his wife had picked out that were the finalists, giving it his blessing, and signing a contract to submit. Where was he other than that? He was practicing. He was watching film of competitors coming up. He was a professional athlete. He said no to everything.
Mm-hmm.
He had 2 hours in 10 days that he could devote. I mean, you can't look at properties at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. That's not the norm. You'd have a hard time setting up showings. So now if we translate that into what we're going to talk about from a seasonality, do you act like that in your business practice when it's April and your lovely spouse says, well, there's something really cool going on at the school today? What do you think the hockey player would say? First of all, the spouse would not ask the question because she knows the answer. There is no extracurricular activity during prime time season, either the preseason run-up or the regular season. So I'm here to douse some cold water on your track you play in your head, which is, oh my God, I have to maintain my family life. If you're going to knock it out of the park from a seasonality standpoint, you need to get that out of your head. You will never perform like a professional athlete if you're always saying yes to every interruption activity that gives you an excuse to not do your work, especially during the time of years where we're talking about where you're going to get your business. So with that bad news for many of you, let's get real. If you really want to take advantage of seasonality, it's either a headwind or a tailwind. Listings come in droves during certain times of the year. If you back up 90 days from that time, if you don't identify them and nurture them and become the credible option, then I'm not telling you you're going to get every one of them that you identify, but if you don't identify them, you're going to get 0% of those that are listing. In your market, it might be 1,000 listings a month coming in. It could be 5,000. You'll get exactly 0 of those if you back up 90 days prior to that you don't get on the phone or get in front of people or work through your database of past clients and advocates and sharks, as Stephanie likes to call them, and do this. So how is this a tailwind or a headwind? I want to tell you a little story about a conversation I had with somebody that we worked with about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And they were, like many agents do this time of year, really grousing about the fact that it's so difficult to find listing opportunities, people that want to say yes and get on the market now. Well, here's the reality. If your goal is to take 5 listings a month, and this was back in October, and you got 3 months left, those 15 listings, October, November, and December, would be harder or easier to take in May, June, July, or August. In other words, you missed your opportunity. Stop complaining. The only person you can blame it on is yourself. You've chosen to go fishing when the ice is solid over the lake. You're going to have to do a lot of work. You're going to have to cut a hole, and you're going to have to sit out there in the bitter cold with that line in the water and hope that a fish comes by. And that's no one's fault but yours. Now let's translate that into when you take advantage of a tailwind. You start in the fall looking for opportunities, as Stephanie said, after the first of the year. You've now identified hundreds of them. People that said nothing other than, we're moving into a bigger house, a smaller house. We're moving across town. We want to buy new construction. We're moving to Florida. Whatever it is, you've identified them as a potential opportunity. Now start to nurture them. Separate yourself from the herd, that you're a productive professional, not just one of the herd. And you do that and nurture the lead. You're proactive about that. You're going to have more listing opportunities you know what to do with, because you have the tailwinds in the first and second quarter and into the early third quarter. Agents who look at it linearly, and I want to tie this down to what Stephanie said, are so far off track, it's ridiculous. Your success in taking anything but a handful of listings between now and the end of the year, unless you're willing to do some really, really heavy lifting, is a function of the fact that you're trying to do it at the wrong time of the year. The analogy of the lake is iced over, you're trying to go fishing, and you didn't bring the chainsaw to cut the ice. Is exactly what most agents are doing. And I want to tie down this 10-month thing. Get out of just, whether it's 12 months or 10 months, get out of thinking linearly. And you see the quote there on the side. I can't tell you how often it's the, well, you know, I'm going to work 40 weeks and I want to do 80 transactions, so I'll just worry about getting 2 a week. No, as you'll see, go get 25 a month during the spring and do next to nothing in the fall other than look for opportunities for the following spring. It's going to be frustrating if, like that agent, you're calling and you're trying to push, because you will be if you're desperate for listings and business. Push people to sell now. I'm already starting to see out on social media here are the great tips and tricks on why you want to sell over the holidays. Is that the truth? Yeah, you know what? There's some great motivated people who will want to buy houses. They're relocating. But are there very many of them? Absolutely not. But they are the majority of who's out there, November, December, looking to put a housing contract, right? There aren't people running around looking at open houses like there are during the spring and summer. That's a much more difficult way to go build your business on a rolling 12-month basis than if you were in the spring, you had 100 people that have indicated that you've identified are going to sell, and you're nurturing those. So your choice, you got headwinds or tailwinds. If you're way behind right now and you're thinking, my pipeline, my future income, my nurtured opportunities are really low now, I don't have a great pipeline, it's a headwind. Now, if you change your expectations, you go heads down and you spend a lot of your time, like we talked about that hockey player, and I'll talk about what that means. Here's the challenge. In Q2, the end of Q1 and all of Q2, probably 60% of your total volume, if you're talking about listings taken, should occur. What does that mean? That means you say no to everything. And we certainly don't want to hear about you taking trips to go on vacation during spring break. Here's the bad news. Unless you've done a knockdown, drag out, you're 100% ahead of plan in the first quarter, you shouldn't be taking off just like you wouldn't see a professional athlete in the NFL saying to their coaching team, you know, I'm going to skip next week in Philadelphia. My family has got a reunion, and I'm going to just not be there on Sunday. First of all, they get fired or traded. But yet in the real estate business, during the season, which is that headwind versus tailwind, the tailwind in the end of the first quarter and the second quarter, I can't tell you. I always see people that are taking off, right? Sometimes they live in an inclement area where it's been cold and they want to get out and about and do things. If you're a professional athlete, you don't do that. You never do that. It's not even an option. You would never think of it. I can tell you the athletes I worked with, you couldn't find them during periods of time that they're in training camp. You couldn't find them doing anything other than work-related activities when it was season. They're watching film, they're practicing, they're working on areas where they're weak. They're studying up on their competition. So we need to get really, really clear on the bad news. The bad news is don't emulate what you see, even from the quote-unquote top producers that are out there on social media. Don't emulate what you see, because it's not 10 months. Divide your annual goal, and that's what you take per month. You should be taking 55 to 60% of your listings. What does this look like when you do this? And it's just not, oh, wow, Kevin's awesome. It's, oh, wow, Kevin actually did this. I started in September. I had so many opportunities for listings that my March and April in a spring where I was on track, I took 27 listings in April. I took 23 listings in March. I probably took 15 or 17 in February. So my 3 months exceeds probably 90% of the real estate population for an entire year. And how did I do that? We'll talk today about how you do that. You have to say no to everything. You have to be set up to succeed because you don't take 2 listings a month or week, if you're doing 80 transactions over a 40-week period. The world doesn't work that way. So get out of, as you see there on the left, the linear thinking. The velocity of the market is everything.
Can I raise my hand?
Go ahead and raise your hand.
You know, there's always an and or a but. And when we talk about spring market and what have you, I think what we're really talking about is families with children. And I guess I have more of a question for you, that some of our clients are really going after one to buy, one to sell, and one referral. 1 equals 3. Those are our numbers that we manage to, and that's who our target market is for most of our clients, 1 to buy and 1 to sell. So because we understand about baby boomers, people that are over 50, closer to 60, and aging up, that does seasonality matter to them if they don't have kids in school?
Yeah, I mean, seasonality has to do with just an ingrained behavioral activity.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
The third week of May would not in North America be the peak week for transactions if it didn't matter, right? Especially in markets like Florida or others where you have certain cities or communities that are heavily not school-age kids where the families are trying to time everything with the school year. The reality is the markets have been seasonal. They have not shifted away. There are very few markets that are not seasonal. I mean, you have a couple, and it's rare, where they're reverse seasonal because you have snowbirds and things like that. Overall, for most people, with very few exceptions, it is a end of Q1, Q2, third week of May peak, and that's when the velocity peaks. We can't fight that. If you choose to fight that, just know you're making a conscious decision that you're going to have to work significantly harder to hit your goals because you're choosing to do it during the time when the ice is over the lake and you didn't bring the chainsaw. There is somebody who's going to list in your market in November, but there's a fraction of the people that are going to list in March, April, and May. A fraction of the people, unless you're in one of those unusual markets. So whether you're a retailer or a grocer, you look at the next bullet point here, you should always have inventory. And if you're down to no inventory, that's a good reason, unless you're planning on taking a month off because you did what we're talking about and you hit your goals by August for the entire year. You always want to have something on the shelves, right? Signs in the yard and listings being marketed generate other sellers. They also generate buyers if you have a team or you choose to work with buyers above a certain price point. So seasonality just means my shelves are going to be stocked accordingly. Just like you see in the retail environment or in grocery store, they change what they put out according to the time of the year. You should be thinking this way as well. They shouldn't have a goal, and I love when I hear this ridiculous statement. You know, some rainmaker, especially if they have some gigantic team and they're like little baby birds that got 9 buyer agents they want to feed. And they're like, well, we maintain 17 to 20 listings at all times. Virtually impossible to do unless you've got garbage listings in the late fall and over the holidays. You should be thinking about seasonality and what you need to do. One of the things you'll hear me talk to people about is there's nothing and if you've been through Listing Mastery, you know exactly what I'm going to say here. There's nothing like a happy seller who is priced right, that has to sell, that has multiple showings to solve your servicing issue. Because the question that's going to come up when you hear me say, go take 60% of your listings in a 60-day period in the spring is, oh my God, how would I service all those? Well, if they're motivated and priced right and they're all being shown, you have nothing to do besides service them from the standpoint of help them pick the right offer. Right. If you take overpriced listings and you end up with listings that language, it'll turn into a nightmare. So be careful about that. And if you haven't taken Listing Mastery, you're going to want to get in there. We're going to be offering it again fairly soon. If you've already taken it and you want to do it again, obviously you can audit like all of our courses like that and do it again. But you need to not get hung up on the, I can't do this because I'm not set up to service taking 27 listings in a month. Because if they're priced right, there are plenty of vendors that go take photos for you, plenty of vendors to do what you need to do. And again, you during that period of time have said no to absolutely everything. You have more than enough cycles. I used to take 5 or 6 listings, hand them in to the person who was going to help me get them set up, and leave town on a Friday. Leave town on a Thursday and be gone for 3 or 4 days. I didn't have sellers clamoring to call me. I didn't have sellers that were like, oh my God, we've been on the market for 75 days. Why aren't we sold? You have the ability to control this, so don't get hung up on that. Now, the competition's behind the curve. Why do we want to do this and take advantage of the headwinds and the tailwinds? Why do we want to do different things? And what I mean by different things is, if I'm the athlete and it's preseason, I'm getting ready to get to camp. In the NFL, it will be in the summertime and at the latest August when they come back into the actual training facility. But there's a whole lot of work that starts well before that. In other words, in the NFL, if they don't go to the Super Bowl and the first weekend in February, they're off for a long period of time, right? It's almost 6 months. They're not just sitting around and getting fat. Hopefully they're not. But the ones that are on track and making the good money are working at what they need to be doing. There is an equivalent activity, because you're probably thinking, why in the world is Kevin talking about this? Now is the time for you to be thinking about March and April. You can make a difference in the next 90 to 120 days as to what your entire year looks like if you do what you need to do. I can tell you with 100% certainty, if you do the model of linear thinking, I'm always behind the curve, I'm just going to make it up later in the year, you're generally not going to do that, because what most people do, and it's human nature, is they give up in the fall. That's why most offices, look around your market center, your office, after Halloween, it's dead. Right? That's like the last hurrah. Everybody shows up in costume. Now, maybe some people will come around and the last push will be the, seasonal fall event of delivering pies, but before the Thanksgiving holiday. But from a work standpoint, almost everybody has taken off. So don't emulate what you see just because there's nobody there. We used to go heads down for the entire fall when everybody else stopped working. And then nobody could figure out why. Because, number one, they weren't around to see what we were doing. We'll figure out why in the spring I could go out and take 27 listings. I'd identified it more than enough to pick through. I probably could have took more, but I started spending time messing around other than taking listing appointments. We would go out of town. We would do other things. And I'd still take 27 listings because I was said no to everything else in the spring. I was taking advantage of the tailwind. It's easy when you go run 5 listing appointments in a day to take 27 listings in a month. You guys can do the math. If I do that on an average of 5 of them, I'm working about 5 days a month in the spring. And I would do that. Stephanie can tell you I would show up at the office with 5 or 6 listing agreements signed regularly after a day of being out of the office all day. I can do more in 5 work days with a great pipeline than people can do in the entire year. There are a lot of agents that would struggle to take 25, 27 listings a year. Some of you are well beyond that, but you start shaking your head of, crap, he's doing this in 5 work days, and I'm slugging it out over a quarter to take 25 listings. And 25 listings in a quarter would make somebody a superstar. They're going to stick you up on stage or at a mastermind event.
Yep.
And I'm raining on your parade to say that an NFL player would laugh. Like, I can do that in 5 days. Think like the NFL player. And that's how I can tell you definitively you can take 25 listings in a month and probably do it in 5 work days. What are you doing the rest of the time? You're looking for more, or you're dealing with offers, or you're helping make sure that those listings get up and live. Because after about 60 or 90 days of that, you're 65% into your entire goal, 60% into your entire goal for the whole year. Nothing else matters during that period of time. So now, as we'll talk about in the next couple of slides, if you back up and take advantage of what you should be doing the right time of year, you're using the tailwinds versus fighting the headwinds all year long. And it's almost like, if you think about the analogy of a glider, you're coasting. You're not working as hard. Do you think that my work day and my schedule, taking 25 listings in 5 or 6 work days, is more or less arduous than what you would see in most offices and market centers in the spring? And I would tell you, if you followed me around, you'd be like, I want to do that because that looks pretty damn easy, right? You're meeting with sellers, you're doing a listing presentation, you're maybe, analyzing comps, and you're on track doing that. The rest of what you see typically is people who don't say no to everything. They're fighting the headwinds, and they're thrashing about. So seasonality in the optimization is directly related to doing the right activity in this concept of preseason, game time, or in season, and then postseason. It's really the way it is. And you can call it off season. You can throw that in there. There are times of the year around the holidays where you would not see Stephanie or I in our real estate business, unless because we own the brokerage, we had to, maintain an open office. We were really working. We didn't have to. If I was bored, and there wasn't anything else going on because there's ice and snow on the ground, I might go do some activity and try and create even more opportunities to be nurtured. But I would do that on a purposeful basis. But if you tried to get me off track during spring or summer, in season, high season, if you will, it wouldn't happen. But also, I had enough opportunities and done enough nurtured opportunities that I could pick and choose the best ones. And that, as for most of you who have taken listing mastery, you know what the power of that is. If every one of my sellers has to sell, and you've got a nice misbalanced pipeline of people that, well, they like to sell, but they don't have to sell, I'll beat you every time. I can go sell 25, take and sell 25, have to sell. And if you don't have enough opportunities, you have to say no to certain people, right? You're in a price range where not very many listings are selling and you don't really need to sell. Best advice you could give them is, this is going to be priced here, or you should probably stay off the market, and here's why. And then listing mastery, we go through that discussion and how to have people make the right decision. Seasonality is a big part of that.
Pick me.
Oh, go ahead.
My hand is raised. Seasonality, I just want to tie that down, just a couple comments about seasonality. Folks, we're from St. Louis. Originally, that's where we started our real estate business. That's where we had our independent brokerage. That's where we knocked it out of the park. If it snowed in St. Louis, which it snows a lot, it would be all in, everybody on the phones. We had 9 Mojo licenses, and the people that really wanted to succeed in our tribe would start calling from home, using their Mojo license to call people, because we knew if there was 6 inches of snow on the ground, everybody's at home. So we used a lot of different ways, sources, and means to create business, expireds, withdrawals, FSBOs, and that's just what we chose because that's the market that we worked in. But everybody would get on the phone, and we had a Real Geek site. We had 500 people signing up a month, and if it snowed, everybody get on the phone. Call your last 20 active leads in Real Geeks today. Well, why? Well, because you're going to reach them. So we took advantage of seasonality. That if we had snow on the ground in December and January and February, that get on the phone, and we got clients in Chicago who know this as well. If it snows, you make your damn calls. Just saying. There's little nuances that we did. Yeah.
It's the same concept, and I'll tie this down between what I said before. Just like in the spring, I can take 25 listings in 5 or 6 work days. You can reach everybody you need to reach if you called every snow day. Let's say there's 3 snow days a month because now all of a sudden you're in December. You'll reach hundreds of people because everybody's home. So take advantage of those opportunities. Even though when you look around, again, don't emulate the professional athlete, not the mediocre agent who's part of the herd. And in that group, I'm going to very clearly define for most market centers and offices, even the top tier agents don't emulate the right behavior. They've either got such a big database, which we'll talk a little bit about today, that they're doing a lot of business and it almost runs on autopilot. I'll talk about how if you do one of the sources of business well over time, you do a good job, a big portion of your heavy lifting is going to be a function of that. So don't emulate an agent in your office or market center who's been in the business 10 years and has knocked it out of the park with their database. They're going to get more business than you can possibly dream of, almost on autopilot. Now, they have to do a good job with it? Yes. Do they have to service it right? Yes. But it'll always be more difficult, and this is why you have to take advantage of seasonality. But don't get confused that, oh, I want that. Well, there's a way and a path to get that, and we have plenty of clients that do. So the challenge is this. Your work and your personal environment have to match. Your ability to say no to almost everything and understand why you're doing things at a certain time. Just like the athlete who said, we're going to buy a house, we need to be in contract by next Friday, and I've got an hour here and an hour there. You need to operate that way yourself. It's really easy to fall into the wrong cycle of behavior and get bad habits when everything slows down, right? Human nature says, God, I'm making these calls and I'm not finding anybody who wants to list this week. A professional athlete would say, I found 3 people that are going to sell in the spring or the summer. Because with seasonality, you don't care, because when you're on track, by the time August rolls around and you're taking 2 or 3 weeks off, you've already done 90% of your entire year worth of business, if you're on track like a professional athlete. The linear agent, the herd, says, I want to do 80 transactions. I'm going to do it over 40 weeks. I need 2 a week. And they're slugging it out. And they didn't take 25 listings. And I'm not saying you have to take 25. Your goals may be different, but it's that analogy of get to 65% or more by the end of May. It's a pretty easy thing. If you remember nothing else from today, set your business plan that says, I want to do 65% of my listings taken with sellers who have to sell by May 31st. Easy, right? It's right before the end of May, for Memorial Day. Everything you do should just be oriented around that one thing. For many of you, this is the first time you've ever heard that. For a lot of you, you've never seen that occur in your market or in your office or market center because it's so rare that this happens. Because we're emulating. Look at the discussions on social media. Look at the discussions that you see on panels if you go to a franchise event or something like that. Then nobody's talking like this about seasonality. Nobody says, I do virtually no listings taken in the fourth quarter, but I take 65% of them in the spring and summer, early summer, or by May 31st. I can't tell you the time that I've ever heard that. I never saw it in St. Louis. We rarely see it, even in our coaching clients. We talk about it all the time. Why is that the case? I'm asking Stephanie's question because I can't imagine she's not going to ask me this. Why do we think that this happens? Because we say yes to everything. Yes to all of the distractions. Yes to this, yes to that. And here's the difference. When you're in the NFL and you sign a contract, you're probably going to earn no less than $475,000 when you're on the roster. You may make $1 million. So your family knows we're going to do nothing to jeopardize that. There isn't a, oh, by the way, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you skip this? Can you come home from practice early? Can you do that? We don't think that way. And here's the good news. Any of you that want to make $475,000 or $1 million can do it in real estate. And here's the bonus. Your tenure is going to be a lot longer than the NFL athlete. They typically only work for a couple of years. Now, if they're unusual, they may work for longer than that, but 2-3 years is about it. So we have an even better business model than a professional athlete if we'll act like one and do what we need to do. You don't schedule vacations in the spring. You don't say yes to everything. You don't give yourself the excuses to not do what you need to do. And we need to start setting those expectations. And the way that you get buy-in from your family, from your spouse, from your girlfriend or boyfriend, or whoever it is that's got to buy in on it, is they see the demonstration of the behavior. In the NFL, it started back in Pop Warner. Then it went into high school. Then it went into college. They've been dead serious about it all along. So if they happen to have a spouse or a girlfriend, they've seen it, right? There's no question. I'm not going to ask you to go take some BS vacation with me during the season. They just know that's not even an option. We need to be setting those expectations by demonstrating the behavior. If you'll do what you need to do in the third and fourth quarter, like we're going to talk about on the next slide, your family's not going to give you a whole bunch of grief when you're taking 20, 25 listings and you're busy as could be in the spring. They'll see the fruit of the labor. They'll see and they'll connect the dots. The linear thinker, well, you know what, all I got to do is take 2 a week, and now it's October or November, and you're so far behind, they've already seen you demonstrate that you're not an NFL player. The good news is it's easy to get on track and it's real hard to get hurt. The tempo is the difference. The professional athlete never steps away from what they need to be doing. You go during off season, you're going to see them lifting weights, running sprints, running stadium stairs. The difference is now that it's the fall, when you should be doing those type of activities, looking for nurtured listing opportunities for the spring, the vast majority of the industry is off screwing off. It's after Halloween and you're not doing anything. So do something different. Take advantage of it. So let's talk a little bit about, in the next 2 slides we'll go through fairly quickly and then see if anybody's got some specific questions. But, you know, what does this look like? If I want to take 65% of my listings taken by the end of May, you know, Q3, it's the wind down and it's off season, right? We need to be, you know, taking care of making sure we close out the majority of our listings that we took earlier in the year. We're going to take care of the inventory. Sometimes that means for some people canceling the listings, right? There's no reason to commit somebody to stay on the market forever if they're not a have to sell or they're in a price range or a listing that's not going to sell. We'll leave that up to you individually, but if it means that you're going to not go fishing for future opportunities, you're going to have to free up your time. In other words, we have to, in the mantra of say no to more people. You should be planning for and rewarding yourself by doing the right activity. By taking an extended vacation in August. This is when you'll see most top performers, we used to do it, take a lot of time off in August. The markets slow down. After the peaks in the third week of May in most North American markets, it's a slow, gradual rundown through August. August starts to slow down a lot, especially the last 2 weeks, because people are getting ready to get into school, showings slow down, everything slows down. As soon as you turn the corner after Labor Day, your focus is 100% on ramping up Q1 and Q2 listing opportunities. And I'm talking about identifying them and nurturing them. You're going to opportunistically look for opportunities to put people on the market. The question I want you to be thinking about and asking every prospective seller, rather than talk about how wonderful it is to be on the market over the holidays because they're serious buyers, ask them a question. If they're going to sell and they're telling you, I want to sell in the spring, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, let me ask you a question. I hear a lot from people who want to sell in the spring, but they want to be on the market. However, I do see some of them actually end up going on the market now. There's less inventory and we have serious buyers. If we were on the market next week, I'm just giving you a hypothetical here, we got a contract and we needed to go through the inspections and close right after the holidays, is that even an option for your family? And if you hear a condition, meaning no, we couldn't even consider taking an offer right now, you know what the answer is. It's a nurtured lead for after the first of the year. If they say, well, tell me more about what's going on in the market and why I might consider that, yeah, we could sell. We could accept that offer. You got somebody to potentially look to opportunistically list in the fall. Don't waste good leads by trying to ram down their throats. And those of you that have been through listing mastery, I go through this extensively. You're trying to take people that have a condition seasonally and trying to make it your problem, theirs. I didn't do what I needed to do all year long. Now I'm scared because it's November, and I'm going to try and hoodwink you into selling, even if it doesn't make sense for you and your family in the fall. There are more people that kill for future listing opportunities by doing that ridiculous sell. They're going to respect you more by you counseling them. If the answer was no, I couldn't even consider taking a contract. Okay, let's start talking about timing for after the first year. It becomes a nurtured listing. This is your time now. You should have started September 1st, but it's November. Still have plenty of time. between now and January 31st to find Q1 and Q2 listing opportunities. Your pipeline needs to be as big as possible by January 31st. So how do these two things tie together? I made a comment of 65% of your listings taken should be by the 31st of May, right before the holiday weekend. The only way you do that is you go head down until January 31st for future listing opportunities. The prospecting for, the conversations with your database, any and everybody you can talk to about who do they know or are they considering coming on the market in 2016. The bigger your pool of opportunities on January 31st, the easier it is to hit 65% on May 31st. It shouldn't be rocket science to see how those two dots connect. But for most agents, when do they think about starting to worry about it? March 1st? Right? Your year is done March 1st. You can have a very successful year, but you're going to have to slug it out all year long, and you're not going to have nearly as much fun than if you do what we talk about between now and January 31st. So 2 dates you need to remember is my listing opportunity and nurtured pipeline needs to be the biggest it is all year long on January 31st. And I'm going to take 65% of my listings taken by May 31st. Doesn't mean you won't take listings other time of the year. You'll see here when we talk about the off-season and the preseason early and the whole Q3, Q4 thing. We're going to be laser focused on the right activities the right time of the year. Focus, get some time off on the holidays. Don't be that agent that's trying to force people to list the first week of December because you're so far behind that you've now got a cash flow crunch and your family's clamoring for what in the world are we going to do because you haven't been working is what you should have during the year. Again, ask that question. Go back and listen to what I said 5 minutes ago. If the answer is no, we couldn't even consider closing before May 1st, then that's their time frame. Now, you always, as we talked about in Listing Mastery, follow up and cut the time frame in half, but don't try and convince them that they should do something that they've told you that's not even an option for them. That's why nurturing and lead follow-through is 70% of your income. We have agents that lose more opportunity by poor follow-through than they could have gotten just by following up. And so their problem is they stir up activity and then they don't follow up on it. Don't be that agent either. You do the right activity. When it's slow, there's nothing wrong with doing the nurturing and the follow-up. You may take some listings. I certainly did in December. We've got a whole program we talk about with private listings. It's beyond the scope of what we can talk about today, but there is a opportunity to do that. Now in Q1, again, January 31st is your big push. That's the point at which you should have the maximum number of future listing opportunities that you're nurturing. You're going to go through a major push of qualification of this large pipeline. You're going to start to segment them. This will be no surprise into either weeks or weeks and months that you're targeting. So you can see, okay, my goal is this. Am I on track? Do I need more opportunities? Or do I just need to go through my qualified pipeline and figure out who falls into what week? And if I close at the percentage that I expect, I've got plenty. Professional athlete emulators in the real estate business have more than enough opportunities. Do they still prospect? Absolutely. But they're not trying to slug it out in March and spend 20 hours on the phone while the professional athlete agent's out taking 5 listings a day, right? While you're on the phone trying to find somebody, there's a professional athlete emulator who's out taking 5 listings that day. So don't be the person who's, oh my God, it's spring, I need to find somebody. You've missed your window. Remember, it's a headwind, not a tailwind. So Q1, go ahead.
I was just going to say, people, when we were in St. Louis, this is what people said about us. They have got to be doing something wrong. Those Cottrells have got to be doing something wrong. They're taking them at 4%, or they threw all kinds of, I'm telling you, we were a bullseye. We were number 3 out of 8,000 our 4th year in the business. And what could people say? That you're following the herd, right? You're just following the herd. That's what they said about us. They have got to be doing something wrong. No, We took our listings at 6% all day long. We priced them right to sell, and Kevin would do exactly what he said he was doing. Honest to God. We would just put our heads down and we'd go to work. And we didn't socialize in the market center, and we did, no deference or not dissing the model we were with, the brand that we were with, but we were heads down, pardon my French, balls to the wall. And we just did what we did. We didn't come from real estate. We came from mortgage and mortgage banking and startups. And we just knew we have to go to work. And I want you to be that agent that people say, they must be doing something wrong. They're taking 5 and 6 listings a week. They must be giving it away. We didn't. We didn't. I just need you to hear that. We had no idea that this is how real estate was supposed to look like. The way that you guys have it in your head, we had no idea. None whatsoever. We came from business. So I'm just saying, we tell the truth. You can pull our numbers. We didn't write a book and tell you a fiction story. We are telling you the honest to God truth. Just get to work. Sorry for my outburst.
No worries. So let's continue on with Q1 and Q2, right? We talked about Q3, Q4. The two main takeaways is that January 31st, largest pipeline of nurtured opportunities. And here's the punishment. If you're not at your optimum highest point on January 31st, you're going to be fighting against a headwind. Yeah. It's going to be more and more difficult as the year progresses to play catch up. So take advantage between now and January 31st to get that thing as high as possible so that your number in May is as high as it can be. Closer to 65%, the better. So we're talking about these different pushes. And this would just be like coming to the equivalent of, in the preseason world of the NFL, double sessions. Focused intensity, nothing else matters. And it sounds counterintuitive, but that is what you should be doing between now and January 31st. I must find as many listing opportunities that I'm nurturing. Between now and then, nothing else matters. Your year will be considerably easier the better you do with that. And don't be that agent, because we had one that was in coaching with us that failed. No other reason to call it that, right? Got promised a song and a story by the office or the market center that they were to just go do this, you'll be fine. Told them what they want to hear. Yep. How did they fail? Their answer on January 31st is, I have 3. And they're in a major metropolitan market. What do you think if you showed up at the NFL double sessions in August at camp and you told your strength and conditioning coach, I can't bench, I haven't been lifting for 6 months? You're probably going to get sent home. Well, the market sends agents home all the time. Don't be that agent. Be focused and consistent. Take a look at these slides. We'll be giving it to you in a PDF, and know what you need to be doing. So if you, hypothetically, I'm going to go through these next 2 slides fairly quickly, but these will be here for reference for you. This is this whole Q3 to Q4. I break down, if I want to sell 100 listings, I just pick the hypothetical. If your goal is 50, just cut them in half. And I'm going to make one caveat to what we're talking about in the next 2 slides. The better you are, especially if you're in coaching with us, you know the answer to this, at being purposeful about building your database of who you've met, because it's not them, it's who they know as well, and who you have as past clients that have experienced your service and your success. The more you have in that database and the better and more proactive you are on it, the easier it is and the lower the numbers are. You're going to get to your high number on January 31st and your listings taking number on May 31st that much easier. And we have coaching clients and agents where they get close to 100 transactions just out of their database and their past clients and their advocates. But they're purposeful about it. So that's the reward. The numbers get easier over time. But this is assuming that somebody wanted to be very purposeful about doing this and they didn't have a gigantic database. I just wanted that as a caveat because I don't want you to be thinking, I don't want to do this every year, right? You're going to shift over time. You may end up with 100 listings or transactions from your database, like those other teams or rainmakers over time, in which case you can decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to be that performer who's going to run it much more on autopilot. They all got there by being purposeful. Now, the asterisk to this is it may have taken them 25 years to do it, and that's why they got where they are. You can do it considerably faster if, let's say, for doing what we're talking about doing. Again, Steph's comment of number 3 in the market, I think the last transaction count was close to 240 transactions, and that was in less than 4 years. From zero. I don't know anybody in St. Louis. So I just did this. The only people I knew in St. Louis were realtors and Stephanie's family. So it certainly wasn't like I had a big database. So I know that it works. So let's talk about the 100 listings sold and taking a little bit more than 100 listings. Q3, you're talking about being focused on vacation in August like we talked about, 15 listings taken. Q4, 10. Not very many. If you only want to cut the number in half from 100 to 50, it's 5 listings in the entire quarter. Don't kid yourself that if you thrash around in the fourth quarter, November and December especially, that you're going to get a bunch of people who go, oh, God, I'm so glad you called me, Kevin. I want to put my house on the market the first week of December. That will be a rarity, so don't kid yourself. Just because you're a linear thinker and you were thinking 2 a week and you didn't hit your 2 a week every week, and you're now way behind and you're thinking, oh, my pipeline sucks. I don't have enough listings and I don't have enough in contract. The time to fix that is between now and January 31st for next year. So when you look at this, Q1 is your prime time. January 31st, again, is the number. We're talking about taking 35 listings in the first quarter. We're talking about January 31st being our high mark. By the time you get to the end of the first quarter, those 35 listings will be more heavily weighted to the end of the first quarter than they will be at the beginning. So you're not going to take 1/3 of the 35 listings, let's say 15 or 16 of them in January. You might take 5 in January, 10 in February, and then the balance in March. So again, don't be a linear thinker. It's going to ramp up and it's going to continue ramping. In our model here, it's 60 of them in the Q2. So in what I'm talking about, you're way beyond 60% by the end of Q2, certainly beyond 60% by the end of May. So it's a very, very disproportionately weighted on the spring model. Just the same way that the NFL, they play for a period of time in the fall. You should be thinking and looking that way and saying, I will have a much easier life. I'll be able to do a lot more things. It'll be much easier for me to do this. I'm tired of cutting through the ice in the winter looking for now listings because I keep forgetting my chainsaw at home. So get out of the habit of setting yourself up to have to do that. It's no fun. There's no fun in doing that. So last slide here. Here is a little bit of further recap. You know, we're talking about nurtured leads, and I'm talking about when they came from typically. In Q3, you're talking about Q2 and early Q3 opportunities. So here's the bad news. If you were going to find people that wanted to list in the fall, you should have found them in July. Back it up 90 days. That's generally when we were. So the time to be thinking about now opportunities is 90 days prior of when you want them, and that's why we're talking about what we're talking about. Q4, it's off season. You're getting ready for 2016 at this point, and it's mostly from Q3. You may talk to some people in August or September that say, yeah, you know what, we're going to be in Europe. We can't be on the market until November 1st. We're traveling over the holidays. We're not even home. Yeah, we'd like to be on the market. We want to take advantage of the low inventory in this area as buyers. That will be a rarity, and that's why we're suggesting you're going to take so few listings. Again, I'm just doing this on a very high volume to make the numbers easy and random. So when you look at it from a Q1 standpoint, 35 listings taken, they're all almost from Q3 and Q4. There'll be some from Q1 that you find by continuing to prospect all the way through January 31st. But again, all this slides by 90 days. We can generally find a person off track by going and looking at when they go raise their hand and go, my pipeline sucks. My investment portfolio is not where I want it to be. We'll go back up 90 days and go, okay, what's been going on for the last 90 days? And it's always coincident with being off track. You're saying yes to too many things and and not saying, I must do what I need to do to be successful. The good news is you're 90 days away from getting on track. If you will pull off the track that plays in your head of, oh my God, I can't find anybody, and you get that panic behavior. It's the fourth quarter. Here's the bad news. You're not going to find very many people that want to go on the market right now. Doesn't mean you don't work. In fact, you can have a dramatic change in your next year. Anything you want to add? I'll leave this last slide up here. I don't want people to get hung up on the number of nurtured opportunities. This is just to give you an idea. This is a placeholder to give you an idea about the sort of size and scale. And this is more for somebody who's looking to build something like I did from scratch, not somebody who has a decent database and has been purposeful about getting referrals from the people that are in their database or their advocates. This is for not met, nurtured opportunities. Either you're doing geographical calling, wherever you're getting from, it's the majority of them coming from outside your database. But wanted to give you an idea of the scale, and how many you would identify during each period of time. You look at that Q1 number, it builds up to, if I'm going to take 35 listings, I got to have a couple hundred of them in my pipeline. This gets you away from the, oh my God, I've got 17 of these things, and I'm getting frustrated because 3 of them told me they're going to list with their best friend from the golf club or an agent they saw at the grocery store. That's going to happen. You need to have plenty of opportunities that you're qualifying and nurturing, and sometimes you have to just let them go. Remember saying no to more things. Be successful. Think about how many of them may not want to price right. Some of them, in some of your markets, that may be a huge issue, and you adjust accordingly. But if you start looking at these, if by the January 31st, I want 200 opportunities, you back it up into Q3 and Q4, that tells you got your work cut out for you, the same way an NFL athlete does. It's game time by the time you get to Q2. And the thing is, your game's going to look very different if you don't have all those opportunities identified and backed up 90 days. And that just so happens to get coincident with January 31st. And that's why I talk about that number being your high water mark for opportunities. Don't worry if you're behind Q3 and Q4 right now. You can play catch-up. You can play catch-up. Maybe you won't hit this perfectly on Q1 versus Q2, and next year you end up doing a little bit more in the summer into early August. That's okay. It will be significantly better if you're focused on the January 31st target than if you just say, you know what, I didn't start this early enough, I'm not going to do it this year. Don't ever let that track play in your head. Everything you do between now and January 31st has everything to do with how well you're going to do and whether you're going to be sawing through the ice next fall in 2016. Anything you want to add as we close up, Steph?
Nope. You're awesome.
Okay, perfect. We're almost at an hour. I don't think I can get one of these done with less than an hour, but we'll be back next week. I want to check here real quick and make sure that nobody has any questions. Looks like we're good. This will be out this week, right, Steph? PDF of the presentation, and then the recording will be up in the playlist for the attendees. You guys have a fantastic week. Hopefully you got a lot out of it, and we'll be back next week.